Okay, this is Rock Your Life with Nora Finch, my video series, and we are going to jump right into it. We are doing part two with Ruge, right?
You got it.
Way of the Peaceful Officer, part two. And we are limited on time today, so we are going to go ahead and get right into it. But for those of you who didn't really listen to part one, Rodger, will you tell us just a little clip again of about your bio and what you do before we start?
Absolutely. Yeah, I spent 20 years as a police officer doing just about every possible thing in the career you could do. And during that time, I also was developing my ability to be more resilient through mindfulness practices. So I'm a 30-year mindfulness practitioner, a 30-year law enforcement master instructor through California Post, and I now teach mindfulness and resiliency practices to first responders.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for all you do and continue to do. Long time in this work. Okay, so Roger and I were talking about today what we're going to talk about a variety of different areas, but most importantly, current events. So I think I would like him to talk about basically what's going on out there and just what's going on. This is July, this is end of June 2021, and I want to talk about what's going on out there currently, and the different managing skills and mindset, because my shows are all about mindset. I'm going to go ahead and let him talk a little bit, and then that'll give me some material for questions. And okay, so let's go.
Absolutely. Rather than breaking down every little nuance of it, I think I can sum it up with what one officer said to me, which was reflective of the entire country. So I've been doing training in lots of jurisdictions, and I've also been talking to officers coast to coast. So I'm getting a feel for where we are. And one officer really seemed to capture it. And he said to me, Roger, I don't know how to do my job anymore. Now, this is a 15-year veteran who takes the job very seriously, is always looking for that next level type of stuff. Tremendous individual and deeply honored to be in the profession of policing. So when I hear someone like that say, I don't know how to do my job anymore, I have to get curious. And I asked, please expand. What exactly are you talking about? And they said, well, I can do everything according to the guides of the law. I could do everything within my departmental policies. I could do everything that I was trained to do, and I'm still wrong. I don't know
Mm.
how to do my job. I said, okay, that sounds very distressing, and I'm hearing this reflected in a variety of ways across the country. So, what does that mean for you? Like, as a culture, how are you dealing with it? Well, when we get an emergency call, we go to those calls because someone in the public has asked us to come. But a lot of times we're driving with the lights and siren on, but we're going to go at the speed limit. And our hope, frankly, is that everything is resolved by the time we get there, that everybody's gone so that we don't have to be in conflict with anyone. Because once again, if I do everything right, I can still be wrong. So we don't want to engage unless we have to engage. And so that's one way we manage it. I said, okay, what about proactive policing? Your patrol duties where you don't have any calls for service. You're now out looking for things that are wrong. Proactive policing. He says, we don't do it. I said, well, why not? He said, it's self-initiated activity that gets us in trouble. And again, I can be right there with all my training, policy, and within the law, but the scrutiny that we're under is being questioned on everything we do. So we don't do anything. We just drive around and kind of put the blinders on unless there's something very serious we come across. We just ignore it so that we don't have to engage. Now, Nora, when I hear this as one person, it's like the old joke. If somebody calls you a horse, they're just messing with you. If two people call you a horse, it's probably a conspiracy. And if 10 people call you a horse, it's time to buy a saddle and giddy up.
Hmm.
So I am hearing this across the country, which shows me that there's a tearing of our social fabric and that policing is collapsing in the middle of this. Now, we're seeing officers disengage. We're seeing officers leave the career at midpoint. They're giving up their benefits, their retirement. They're just out because who can work effectively under those conditions? And so I've been really taking some deep dives into how can I support those that remain, who want to stay in the career, who want to make a change, who want to be part of this reform, which I think ultimately is going to make policing even stronger. But how do you navigate now, right now, with a bit more ease and grace? And the only thing that I have always been coming to as a foundational default is to take your energy and focus it 100% on what you can control. We have to let the rest go as best we can. It doesn't mean that we don't work toward changing the things we don't like, but in the moment, the now, what is it that we can control? And one of the things that's happening, Nora, that is really jacking up the profession is this constant stress, which is normal in a first responder job, especially law enforcement, is now being exacerbated to this kind of 24/7 pounding that they're taking, whether it's from their own administrations, media, citizens pushing back against them. The stress is amazing. And of course, that is being brought home. And now we're transferring that to work, from work to home. This is becoming a huge problem. So, what that means from a nervous system physiological standpoint is officers, as a general rule, are in constant sympathetic nervous system dominance. The production of cortisol is flooding that bloodstream, and we're seeing the ramifications of that as things break down. How do we counterbalance that, right? So it's sort of like right now you got the load in the washing machine all to one side, and that thing's just wonking against the wall. How are we going to even the load out? Well, one of the ways is through a very simple breathwork technique I'd love to share with you because it's so effective and so simple. And it is designed specifically to center the heart plexus, right? Where all those neurons bundle together in the heart, settle those down, and put us into parasympathetic restoration. So the idea is super simple. It's to get our breathing down to 6 breaths a minute. Now, most of us are breathing somewhere between 12 and 18 breaths a minute, and that's sympathetically stimulating. Nothing wrong with that. We need to be elevated. But when we're too elevated, we got to come below that to get parasympathetic, and that's 6 breaths a minute. How do we do that? Well, we can do a very simple breathing pattern. We breathe straight into the heart, so as if our mouth were here. We're also going to breathe nasally, because nasal breathing is parasympathetic just from that action. So we breathe in through the nose, we breathe directly into the heart, and we breathe for 5 seconds in. And then no holds, you exhale for 5 seconds. Now, when we do this, that adds up to 6 breaths in a minute. 5 in, 5 out. And by doing that, we're parasympathetically settling down the autonomic nervous system. The heart rate lowers, the blood pressure lowers, the mental hijack calms down, cognitive processing increases due to the flow of oxygen getting back to the frontal lobe. Stress robs us of that. That's a super simple way to simply bring ourselves down a bit. And now we have the ability to not be hijacked as much by outside circumstances. And we can now focus on the aspects of what's happening with what we can actually control instead of getting wrapped around the axle from all the things we can't affect or change.
So do you want to give an example? You want to do it right now?
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Let's do it. So if you can do this right now, if you have the ability to close your eyes, if you're not driving or, you're not distracted by other stuff, go ahead and close your eyes down. If not, you can just soften your gaze and do this anywhere. I did this in a meeting the other day. Just because I had the time and I wanted to just settle my physiology down while others were talking and presenting. I'm still alert, aware. So you could do this anywhere and just soften your gaze is fine. Keep your eyes open.
Okay, I think I'm going to close my eyes maybe. I'll do it.
Good.
Okay.
Now, what I want you to do is just to take a couple of breaths and just visualize the breath going in and out of your heart area, the center of your chest. It's not specifically the heart, but just in the center of the chest. And so just allow the breath to flow through the nose, and it's going into that heart area, and then the breath out. And then I want you to increase the time of the inhale and the time of the exhale to approximately 5 seconds. Don't get too hung up on the actual number. 4 is fine, 6 is fine, whatever feels good to you. And we're just going to breathe into that heart center, in and out, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, or whatever number makes sense to you. And just notice what happens to your body and your mind when you do this. And then you just do this until you feel complete. That might be a minute, might be 10, it doesn't matter. But anytime you're feeling just a little bit hijacked, you feel a little edge of stress coming on, remind yourself, take that breath for just a minute, even a minute. And what's really cool about this, let's say, Nora, that we're driving down the road and somebody cuts us off in traffic and we have a reaction to that, right? We're a little stressed and we react. What a jerk. We're waving with one of 5 fingers, maybe throwing a few expletives out the window. We will stay in that cortisol response up to 12 hours. 12 hours.
Wow.
Right.
I didn't
I
know
mean,
that.
and that's just from one little stress event coming in. So imagine if you're under greater levels of distress, how much more that's going to be, right? We do this kind of breathing, and we talked about this in the first episode too, but we do this type of breathing parasympathetically for 3 minutes, and we can stay in parasympathetic restoration for up to 6 hours. So it's a tremendous counterbalance. And when people ask me, when should I practice? Well, I think setting a routine is a good idea so we remember, because it's hard in the middle of our day to, hit that
Well,
reset.
Well, you know what I was going to say, though? It's so easy and it's so basic. It's just literally doing it. I mean, get right when you get in the patrol car or just as a first responder in the fire truck, whatever engine, and in front of the computer. Like I say, close your damn eyes. Like those couple minutes, because it doesn't have to be some dramatic whatever. Just you get in the car, stop. Okay, that's like how, okay, like blessing yourself for going out there on the road, like every day. You know what I mean? Like, so, like little basics things. And yeah, don't be hard on yourself. Like, if you don't do it, but at the same time, too, you're going to see the benefit from doing it for the few minutes because you're making yourself stop.
I love
So,
that. I think you're spot on. And, one of the more successful ways that some of the coaching folks I work with, some of the people that I train, one of the most successful ways it's been presented back to me to remember to do this is they do it for 3 minutes between calls. So we're not
right, you
talking
have
about
3 minutes.
emergency to emergency, right? But where you're just really, it's one of those days. But for the most part, we could
Hmm.
take 3 minutes between things and just reset. And then by resetting all day long, we
Hmm.
stay more
Hmm.
parasympathetically restored. And it's an
Hmm.
easy way to develop a
Hmm.
habitual pattern. I just do this
Well,
between things.
Well, I think, another thing this is could take us to another area is people recognizing what either negative thoughts are or negative energy is. So, say you get in the car or whatever after you just experience something and you're just like wanting, like, whether it's negative psychobabble to yourself about the situation or whatever's going on or what you should have done or what you shouldn't have done and all these sorts of things, might as well you should just slap yourself in the face. I feel like that would be a good way to wake yourself up, but get in there and like recognize it right away. Okay, stop. Because all of that sort of stuff, I feel like we replay like the broken record, like just over and over again. And yeah, you only have those 3 minutes. So I know it's another, again, a skill you kind of have to develop and make it a habit. But I think just using the word like stop, that is just, I feel like, is so easy. Sometimes they have different techniques, right? The rubber band on the wrist, but you want to make it hard enough to like get your attention or whatever it is. And hopefully maybe you have a supportive partner where, because you're not both going at it, right? And intensifying it. It's kind of like gossip, right? I like to try and explain like how does that make you feel? Like when you're sitting around talking about other people, again, it's perpetuated by the culture.
Well, that
So,
that particular technique that I just shared with you comes from the Institute of Heart Math. I'm going through a professional certification program with them because I just think that they have some really amazing strategies to be able to quickly reset heart coherence. So
Mm-hmm.
there's science behind this. This isn't some woo-woo practice,
Right.
right? And
Right.
you bring up a very good point about this kind of energetic thing. And one of the things I started playing with, because I tend to view the world pessimistically, cynically from that officer perspective, right? Worst case scenario thinking is a survival coping mechanism. We have to do it. But who's driving the bus, right? I have this analogy that we all I won't use the word suffer. We all have multiple personality disorder. And what voice is alive in your head is the person who comes to drive your bus. But you're the master.
Right.
So when you give up the driver's seat, then maybe that person comes in and, like you said, you're with another person thinking the same way, and all of a sudden you're jacking each other up, right? Who's driving your bus? Is the master driving the bus? Now, I don't shut down any of my personalities, never, because they often have something valuable to say. But what I do is, in my mind, I say, okay, I hear you. You're trying to get my attention right now. Why don't you come on up and sit next to me for a minute? Provide me with the information you want. Let me listen to you. And then if there's
Mm-hmm.
any wisdom there, great. I thank them. I send them back to their seat in the bus. But the master continues to drive the bus, and I'll take the input and say, was there anything of value there? Do I need to make an adjustment right now?
Mm-hmm.
That way, I don't let the negative, cynical guy take over driving the bus, and he's likely to take that thing and drive it off a cliff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want that to happen. So I always try to be the master. And how can I remain master? I've got to be parasympathetic. If I'm sympathetically nervous system dominated and jacked up, that guy will take over driving the bus. But if I can reset in 3 minutes and then say, okay, now let me listen to that voice for a minute logically. Is there anything here of value to me? If there is, I'll take it. If there isn't, then I'll thank it because it's just trying to help me. I'm not mad at it. I thank it and send it back to the seat, and onward I go with my day. So these resets become a critical way for me personally to navigate my own stuff.
So, can we backtrack as far as this mindset goes, as far as looking at their career? I thought this would be a good time to journal, or they could exercise after the show, writing exercise. So, as far as staying in this career and believing like it's needed and it's meaningful and they can do all of this, what are some things that they could say to themselves, like to genuinely look like, why? Like, why should I stay doing this? Like, why?
Yeah, the why is super critical. And everybody's going to have to find a way to find the why. The sentiment I'm getting from the officers in the field is resentment. They resent the media. They resent the public pushing back on them. What I would say to that is pause for a minute, get yourself out of those emotions that are on the lower negative side of the fence, the anger, the fear, the frustration, the sadness, the resentment. And can we breathe for a minute and shift ourselves and say, that media report was just beating us up. I wonder if there's any truth in that. And if there is any truth in that, can my agency make an adjustment? Can the culture make an adjustment? Can I make a personal adjustment? What am I doing to perpetuate that perspective that they had? You see, once again, what we do in that process by taking in the information, we don't have to agree with it, but we run it through our internal processor and we say, that's actually a relevant point. And here's how I'm adding to that. Okay, within that, here's what I can control, and I'm going to make a commitment to this behavioral shift. Now, what you do, instead of trenching in and getting ready for an us versus them fight, you say, how can I be collaborative in acknowledging their pain, their suffering, their perspective, and make a shift that will help us all collectively, collaboratively, community move forward together. Right now, what I see is division. And the more each side trenches in, the more division. We're not going to move forward. We got to start hearing each other. And it doesn't mean you become a doormat to let somebody wipe their feet on you, But it does mean you take a step back and actively listen and then focus on the aspects of that you can control to make a shift that moves everyone in the right direction.
Well, I think it's really difficult in general, I think, to think really positive and not be bitter. So how can they feel? I have my own tips, of course. How can they not feel defeated about whether you want to look at it as dark or evil or bad or whatever, and who gets ahead and nothing's going to change and this is what it is and we can't do anything and all this language like that? How for you, if this was you, well, if this was you, right, back, like this is you currently on the street, if you were in this way knowing what you know now, what would you see? I have my own. I start with the techniques as far as positive thinking, since I know what it's like to think so negative. You have to believe that change is possible. You have to make and create it in your mind that in our lifetime, we're going to see these changes, for the good of humanity. So I think changing your language, for my piece of advice, is changing the language and believing like there are good people out there. They're not all narcissistic people. They're not all like, so do you have a method or an approach, or because talking all this is good, right? Like it's good to talk about it. That's why I go to language first, omitting the use of can't. This is just the way that it is. Nothing's gonna change. You got to change that first, right? We have to change ourselves first.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I love your question. And there's a couple of things. First off, completely in agreement, right? When the negative thought comes, one of the techniques I do, because I do tend toward that side of the fence.
Yeah,
Again,
of
it's just
course.
kind of how I'm wired and it's part of the profession. So then I say, oh, that's an interesting thought. What
Yeah,
else is possible?
yeah, it's
Right. So
interesting
I
thought. Yeah.
immediately question the thought, and the thought may be 100% true, but there's always also a counterbalance there. So that's one way. I'm right there with you. The second thing is when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling a lot of pressure and it's really starting to get to me, I shut off all forms of media that would contribute to it. And I
Okay,
only
good.
watch things that are positive. I'm going to watch, if I'm going to watch something on a television show, it's going to be happy and funny. It's going to be positive, loving, joyful. I'm not going to watch a zombie apocalypse movie. Okay.
All right.
The other thing I'm going to do, if I'm in distress, and friends, I want you to really hear this one. If I'm in distress and I'm at the point where, just to give you a terrible analogy, I won the lottery and I couldn't see that as a positive. Okay.
Uh,
When you're there, you need help. You need professional intervention. Everyone's got access to their employee assistance programs. We are better than ever at having culturally competent counselors, psychologists, and psychotherapists. Make the anonymous appointment. We got to smash this stigma that that's a sign of weakness. Last time I checked, we're all human. We all bleed. We all have emotional content. And we're asking officers to do something that really is just amazingly intense. Most human beings will go through 1 to 2 trauma events in their lifetime. That's a normal
it's just
human
hair.
being. An officer, a firefighter, a paramedic, 500 to 800 throughout the course of a career. If you think that you're not going to suffer as a result of seeing all that human dysfunction and trauma, you're lying to yourself. It's not true. You need to go get professional help sometimes to help guide you, navigate you back to the light. Otherwise, you're going to go to maladaptive coping mechanisms like checking out from everyone, drinking too much, those kinds of things, just letting ourselves go. We've got to come back to a point where when we are suffering, it's time to get that outside perspective to help balance us out.
Do you think there's a sense of being, I don't want to say attached to the label, but you're so focused on these sorts of things? What would I do if I didn't do this anymore? Nobody will love me if I don't do this anymore. I'm nobody. Like that whole association with it almost keeps them stuck in it because of ego or whatever it is. That's another, like that's the overwhelming, do you know what I mean?
It's an identity issue, Nora.
The
It's, yep.
main thing of why they don't realize how severe that their mental health, like it's not as important, because nobody, remember, like, again, it's like our culture, like nobody cares as long as you look good and how sexy you are and whatever your own and in your uniform, if you don't wear your uniform, like, do you know what I mean? And all the attention you get when you are in your uniform.
Well, no
So
one says,
it
I
feeds you.
practice law enforcement for the city of. They say, I am a cop. I
uh
am a firefighter, right? So
mhm.
there's a huge component of our identity in there. And we can get really stuck in that place. And it's a hard place to extricate ourselves from. So we got to notch back a little bit. We've got to really just take a step back for a broader perspective. And what ends up happening is when we are under distress, which is true for the culture right now, it's just how it is. Even firefighters are receiving pushback. I mean, once, firefighter goes into an area and people start throwing rocks and bricks at the fire trucks,
I don't understand that. What was that? Because I saw something on Facebook. They were talking about it was verbal assault. What? I don't understand with that. What's going on with that?
well, and I'm not 100% sure either, but when you're placing yourself in the status of a hero servant, and suddenly the people that you're there protecting in large groups are pushing back against you for seemingly no logical reason whatsoever, because you're there with your service heart, but to them you're representing something they don't like. It's not that they don't like
But
you. So how do you navigate that?
but
How do
but
you
but the
become
firefighters
better?
have always been glamorized. That's why I'm not. What? Not
Well,
anymore.
they're representing a structure of
Structure.
government,
I
right?
see.
And
Okay,
people are
got it.
pushing back against the structure. Even some black officers that I've been talking to are saying within their own community, the the different movements that are happening, they're being rejected because they're not only black, but they're also quote blue. And it's like the humanity of the officer in the eyes of people who don't like these structures, the oppression that they perceive, all the stuff that they're pushing back against, the officer, the firefighter, the EMT represent a piece of that structure, and that's the piece they can fight, push back on, rebel against, and feel like they have some form of empowerment. Now, I'm very much broad brushing here, and that's a very simplistic look at a very complex issue. But then how do you navigate that when you're coming in with a service oriented heart to help and you're being rejected? Your identity
And
is being pushed on. I'm telling you, if you find yourself in that place of distress, it's really important to disconnect from all the media for a while. Definitely let that go. Focus on these abilities to lower the sympathetic nervous system response, because that makes you more reactive to anger, fear, and sadness. We lower that, then we can feel happiness, joy, positivity. We can begin shifting our internal thoughts more toward the positive, what we can control. And when we're in distress, go get help, friends. Just go get help.
this is all coming back, though, to finding a reason to not only live, to stay here. And again, in this career, if you love it, this is going back to my specialty of the self worth, the standing up for yourself and everything. By the way, that I was going to share with everybody, I'm going to start an audio series. It's kind of like an Audible. You've heard of Audible, right? The listening thing, but it's called Listenable. How cute. It's going to be a mental readiness series for first responders. And it's going to be all of this stuff about belief in self and like the importance of it, because I feel like and know when you have that power and strength, you're going to be able to withstand this and feel more powerful. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but because I know and we know that change is possible. I think though this is going to have to almost start with young people. Yes, the training in the academy, but you have to, and again, to deal with the narcissist. So I think this just all goes down to, like, do you want to put in the work? Maybe this is a sort of thing too we've talked about. If you want to pick this career, like, put a cap on it. I'm going to do this for 5 years, or whatever it is, because no matter what kind of holistic mental training and everything, this is going to affect your brain, this type of work, correct? Right? PTSD,
100%.
PTSD or not, just dealing with people, the public, the guilt that you walk away with, whatever it is, this is what I call inner struggles. And I feel like it's magnified with first responders.
Yeah, if you want to really shock yourself as a first responder, try this. If you've been on the job, let's say around a decade ish, somewhere in there, go back to the people you knew before you became a
Yes,
police
right.
officer and ask them, hey, how have I changed? And the reflections you get back from that can be quite sobering. I see, this. So we have this label post traumatic stress, and then we have the idea that it's a disorder, and that's in the DSM, and there's certain
Yeah.
criteria to diagnose. Okay, great. But I believe it more of a spectrum of post traumatic stress. I think every first responder, whether you're a firefighter, an EMT, a paramedic, an emergency room doctor, police officer, they all have a certain degree. It's on a spectrum, and I kind of label it from 1 to 4. 1 is it's beginning to come in, 2 a little more, 3, etc. 4 would be a full-blown diagnosis of post-traumatic stress as an actual disorder. I believe every first responder has that, unless they are sociopathic or completely narcissistic, to where the normal emotional responses are not available to that person. And that's relatively rare, thankfully. But at the end of the day, how do we navigate that, right? If the first step, Nora, is to acknowledge it, that it is wearing you down, that this job does take a toll on you, and the statistics prove it out. It is beyond question. And all you got to do is your own research to validate that if you don't believe it. You cannot walk away from the research without any other perspective than, yes, this job
Hmm.
will affect me over the course of time. So
Well,
we got to do something about it.
well, I think a lot of this stuff, like anything in life, sometimes bad stuff, whatever you label that, has to happen. But if people, you have to want to find a solution for something. If it's not a problem for you, like you're not, you know what I mean, going to be seeking something out, which I was going to bring up as a way to care about yourself and look into this. Do you know much about biofeedback, which sounds so interesting?
I am constantly using biofeedback, and I've been doing that since the early 90s. And I did it with everything from holding a thermometer in my hand to see if I could, with my mind, increase the circulation of blood flow to my hands, parasympathetic to do that and increase the temperature, all the way up to a very modern technology where I use something called the inner balance from HeartMath. And HeartMath allows you to see the coherence of your heart in real time, and how I can affect that with breath work and nothing more than thoughts in my mind. So I'm using that biofeedback. I've got an Aura ring on, which tracks my sleep quality, and it gives me the ability to recover better. I do all kinds of biofeedback, and biofeedback is a huge component of my coaching program when I work with first responders who are stuck, because once we can see the data of how the stress is affecting us, we actually can then say, you know what, I am not immune. And that's a big one, because everybody says, oh, that's other people, not me. It'll never happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so having the biofeedback, Nora, does two things. One, it shows you, yes, this is affecting me, but it also shows you that when you put a little bit of effort in, not talking a lot either, a little bit of effort in, you can completely change your mental and physical
So,
health.
so can I ask you, and then do we need to go here in a minute?
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
about 5 more minutes left.
Okay. So let's close again with a walk away. So say the person, they're used to always the high cortisol, the adrenal, not sleeping, everything. So it's become normal to them. They almost forgot what it was like to live before in like a peaceful state. What's something like, okay, so they go and pursue biofeedback, which this is what I know, it tests, right, how your body responds to stress. Isn't it like sweat? Like you can, so what I'm getting to is like, how would they be able to recognize like, hey, I feel I really get this, my heart palpitations, and maybe this is called anxiety, like they could describe it like when they go and speak in front of somebody, to basically recognize like, okay, my body, there's another way to feel. Like this feels, what would be a way to like, is that a good way? Like noticing your body, like the heart palpitations after a call, or like what's something that like a side effect that you felt when you were first, you knew it was wrong, you know what I mean? Like not normal for your body to feel like that.
Yeah, there are some very key indicators, and again, you could write books about this, right? But what's the quality of your mind? Are you caught in a negative loop? Can't get out.
Okay.
There's one. The second one is do a body scan. Are you tense anywhere? Do you have contracted muscles, headache, stuff that's happening?
Headaches, physical
Right.
symptoms. Okay,
Physical
that's something.
symptomologies are what I like to call messages from the body. And
Yes.
here's what happens, Nora. I get a headache. The body is actually raising a little bit of a red flag. It's saying to you, I am not in balance. I'm not in
Yes.
homeostasis. So now I've
Yes.
manifested a headache. And it's kind of like knocking on your door. And what do we do? Well, instead of
Mm-hmm.
answering the door and figuring out the cause of that headache, we take something like Tylenol.
Right. Right.
And so then the body says, great, I feel better. And we go back to our life, right? But then the headache returns. And so we take more. And then pretty soon we're taking Tylenol all day. And then the Tylenol doesn't work. And now we go to the doctor and they say, try this prescription strength. And the body the whole time is knocking, knocking, pounding
Yes.
on the door. But we keep kicking the
Yes.
can down the road until we tip into chronic disease issues. That's the problem. I want you to begin thinking, friends, that this amazing machine intuitively knows exactly what it needs. And when it is out of homeostasis, out of balance, it's going to give you a physical symptom that is a red flag trying to get your attention now so that you can explore the root cause of that. That's direct biofeedback from your body that's telling you you're not in alignment. That right there is an automatic stop. Let
Mm-hmm.
me reset. Let me do the heart centered breathing for a minute. Let me reduce the tension in my body. Let me go get a massage. Let me do other things besides maladaptive coping strategies like drinking, taking the Tylenol all the time. Let me get to the root cause and stop trying to mask the symptoms, but let me pay attention to this innate wisdom our body has. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm here to tell you, friends. Listen to the machine because it's talking to you.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And also, they're so worried about their hot bodies and their figures. Don't forget about your mental health. Like,
Huge.
again, it's a whole cultural thing. Where, like to help say that we are important. It's like you can't, I feel like you have to just, it's a long journey to find out that, realize that we are important, and a lot of
It's huge.
subconscious training. Okay, so biofeedback's the first thing that they can do to check out if they're just interested in this kind of stuff, and also just listening to your body. I think that more so, and then also part of it. And then I think to close, there's plenty of like during this time, as far as talking to people, I think we don't want to feed more into this. So I think really music, surrounding yourself with positive people, and just more so focusing on what we can do to change. And like you said, like, focusing on ourselves, and that I was saying that we have to change ourselves, but trying to think more positively. I know it's really challenging to do that.
Do,
And,
do more of what brings you joy. That's really it. You want the simplest formula. If somebody said it a long time ago, maybe it was a guy like Ram Dass, I don't know, but he was spot on when he said, follow your bliss. Do more of that. The thing that happens when we're under stress is we pull back from the activities that bring us joy. We stop going to church. We stop riding our mountain bike. We don't do the gardening or walking in the forest or playing with our dog anymore. We just pull in. It's like, no, no, push back exactly on those things. Go deeper into the things that bring you happiness and joy. And what's the best way? I get this question all the time. Rodger, what's the best way? Whatever causes you happiness and joy. If walking in a park barefoot on the
mm-hmm.
grass brings you joy, Great. If throwing a frisbee with your friend brings you joy, wonderful. There's no right or wrong way here. It's what causes you to feel happy. Do more of that. And it is
Mm,
so hard when life is curb stomping you, right? But that's the time to double down on it as that counterbalance.
hmm. Surround yourself with more positive things.
Definitely. And
And
especially people, as you said, that's huge.
I think that's really huge in community. And that's a whole nother thing. Again, I'm going to lastly say branch out of your circle and start, talking to more people,
I found the greatest
different
balance
kinds of
has
people.
been by stepping out of the culture and developing friendships that have nothing to do with it.
Yep. Yep, pretty
Huge.
much, because it's going to keep you in that constant state of you feel like, oh, it's your family, right? But if you're all talking about the same things, or really negative, and or that you really just end up drinking with them all the time. So all of that changes, those sorts of things there. Okay. So I thought I was going to ask you one more question about staying in this career, but I think if we want to, we can just talk about that more next time and maybe get an update and see what's going on out there. But is there
I like
anything
the
else?
idea of chatting, a little bit more at length about this idea of career survival. I want to blow that up, and maybe we can call the next episode Career Thriving.
Oh, I love that. And then also we would talk again about my mindset surviving or holistic. What do you think?
Definitely.
What would it be? The expecting. So I was going to talk about people to end the show. Uh, Top challenges, inner struggles, I call them. So whether it is you don't want to be the black sheep or what that's like, and your expectations to always perform at 100, competing and comparing yourselves with others. These are all the things I call inner struggles that even whatever you want to call them, people not first responders, like I already always deal with this kind of stuff. So, but again, like I said, I think it's intensified because of the type of work that you guys do,
Yeah, it is.
So,
We always like to say it's on steroids. It's accurate. It's just more. And although we are wired psychologically to do these things better than most in the first responder community, I'm sorry, you're just going to wear down if you don't take proactive measures to counterbalance that. So this is your inner struggle thing is exactly right. And learning more of these processes that counterbalance is the key to thriving. Instead
mhm.
of just surviving and then having a short retirement until you pass on, let's break these numbers. Let's shatter them.
Well, again, the focusing on those sorts of things too. It's like, what if you don't even make it to retirement because you're dead?
100%.
Remember that saying? What happened to that saying that said stress kills? You think people don't really believe that?
I think they don't believe it, but the statistics bear it out. And again, I don't take my word for any of this, friends. Go do your own research. Go check out
Mm-hmm.
the Institute for Heart Math. A
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal amount of research, and they work extensively with law enforcement, military, and special forces. And if you think it sounds woo-woo, heart math, no, this is pure
Mm-hmm.
science. Check it out. It'll blow your mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think just stepping outside and looking at exactly what you're doing. If you were to view yourself in your career and you actually saw like what you're involved with, I think that um, because it's so insidious. The stress. They're like, well, I don't have heart pains. I don't have anxiety. I don't have whatever. Those people, there's people that have many heart attacks didn't even know that they were having them.
For 45% of the first responder community, the first sign of heart disease is a fatal heart attack.
Fatal heart attack. The first sign of heart disease. Sorry, I keep
Correct.
messing with my hair. It keeps looking like it looks like wig over there.
Yeah, that's the very first symptom is death.
Oh, okay. Well, we're for the people that want to live. Our
We are
shows.
here for you.
Yes, we
Like
are
I
here
said,
for you.
I want you
Okay.
to not only survive a career, I want you to thrive in every aspect of it from beginning to end. And if that sounds Pollyannish, it's
Mm-hmm.
not. You can do it. You got to put the effort in. You have to change a few behaviors, but I promise you that you can be guided to that gracefully and we can make change every single day. And as a result of that, Nora, I'll just close with this thought. We become part of the solution, the cultural change that needs to take place. It is a duty to do so, in my opinion.
Okay, good. Thank you. Do you, so if they want to, what are you offering right now for people, either for talking, like talks, or I don't know necessarily coaching? So how are you available, or what, I mean, as far as to other officers that,
Yeah,
want to,
I think the best thing I can do is just tell people to reach out with anything to me directly via my email. And if
okay.
I can't provide it for you, I will have a resource for you. I'm connected across the country to vast resources. So I'm very happy to be that person. And the email address is super simple. It's Rodger, which has a D in it,
Mm-hmm,
RODGER,
mm-hmm.
at herotalk.org.
Okay.
And that's just
Okay.
a super simple way. And then, of course, if you want to connect with me professionally, the only social media that I do is LinkedIn, because I like to keep it professional, and that's a very safe, non-troll environment. So people can also connect with me there just to be connected and see what's happening. Those are the two modalities to communicate with me most effectively.
Okay. And do you have any sort of group like that you would be interested, if people were interested in like a group Zoom talking something
Oh yeah, I'm,
in the
I'm open
future?
to explore anything. I can come to your departments and do training. I can do training online. And if you're interested in working with me individually, I do individual coaching as well for folks who really want to take it to the next level of human performance. That's what I love to do.
Okay. And we can also do a couple more shows too, and then they can get some information out of there.
Terrific.
Of course. Of course. Okay. So thank you all for listening, tuning in, watching this. And thank you, Rodger. And of course, we hope this benefited you and maybe at least perked some interest to take a look inside at your holistic health, basically mind, body, spirit. And thanks for listening to Rock Your Life. Bye.
Bye, everybody.